changes or additions to the agenda? So none, we'll move on. Next up is announcements and recognition. Any announcements or recognitions?
Hunter Furlan has achieved the 100 varsity wrestling win achievement over the last week. So they've been on quite a successful season.
Congratulations, Hunter. Any other announcements or recognitions? I have one. We have a letter from the Secretary of Education of Vermont recognizing Riverside Middle School for their positive behavior interventions and supports the PBIS implementation during the 2023-2024 school year. It's a nice letter from the Secretary of Education. We'll try and get that posted. Congratulations. Any other announcements or recognitions? Seeing none, next we'll move on. Next on their agenda is citizens' comments. So this is time for citizens' comment on items that are currently on the agenda, where we'll take questions or comments then. Are there any citizens' comments?
Sure. This isn't long. It looks like the college is large. My name is Mary Finley. I'm an educator at Southern Vermont University. And I wanted to offer my comments on the recent vote that caused the shift of classes and what I see as a conflict of interest in this matter, and also the resignation of David Cohn, who's the principal of my son's school. He will be talking about that as well. I stood here a few weeks back when there were struggles with resignations and staffing at Union, when some parents were upset at the lack of IEP support. And I asked, how can we as parents help all of you? How can we help? Some nice lady took my contact information down, and I never heard from anyone. I believe that most parents do want to be part of the solution, but when that help isn't accepted, we will become part of the problem because we're given no other choice. And trust me when I tell you that I'm speaking right now for a lot of parents that have come to me and staff who are too scared to force their opinion to the board. I want to lay out the facts as I know them first. I understand there was a recent vote by the school board that approved adding a pre-K to Elm, moving 5 second grade classes to Union into 4 classrooms, and moving the 5th graders, which is my son's class, to Riverside. The vote was not on the agenda as such for that meeting, but came under the budgetary category, if I'm correct. So the lack of transparency afforded no option for the community to weigh in. We were not notified this was happening. Instead, we were notified via email after the fact that it did happen. That notification stated, quote, "We realize this change may cause some nervousness and anxiety." But I say no. What causes nervousness and anxiety is the fact that none of you have a child at either Elm or Union. And board member Dee Hunter was a yes vote in this matter, yet Dee's wife, Rachel Hunter, is the principal of Elm and the pre-K administrator who has a vested interest in the outcome of the vote. This clearly creates a conflict of interest. As an English professor and educator, I like to define words so people understand the clear meaning. Quote, "A conflict of interest occurs when an individual's personal interests, family, friendships, financial or social factors, could compromise his or her judgment, decisions, or actions in the workplace. Government agencies take conflicts of interest so seriously that they are regulated," end quote. And another one, just for, so we have 2, quote, "A situation in which a person is in a position to derive personal benefit from actions or decisions made in their official capacity," end quote, Oxford Dictionary. In addition to this conflict of interest, there's also a conflict of interest in the chief financial officer of the school board acting as the interim superintendent. If we look up school board conflicts of interest, you'll find, quote, "A school board member should not act as the superintendent of schools because the superintendent is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the school district. The school board is responsible for setting policy and providing oversight and representing the community's desires and expectations." My understanding is that the CFO has 0 qualifications for his role as interim superintendent, yet there is a person, the only one I believe, in the district with this qualification, and it was David Cohn, who wasn't even asked. In case you were unaware, Tammy Stagner, who's not allowed to hire her daughter, she was not allowed to hire her daughter to work for the All for One program because it was considered a conflict of interest. Let's just think about that for a second. Yet here we have the wife of the Elm Hill principal, who's also pre-K administrator, voting for a move that directly benefits her family, and a school board member acting as the interim superintendent with 0 qualifications when a qualified candidate exists within the district. D. Hunter should recuse herself from any vote on this matter. The entire vote should be rescinded and the matter properly logged on the agenda to ensure transparency so the community has proper notice for discussion before any vote is rendered. The issues that this move will cause are astronomical to the teaching staff and the kids and families involved, especially given the fact that 10-year-olds are now going to be wandering from class to class in a building with kids far older than they are. Since many of you are clearly out of touch with 10-year-olds, let me reinstate and reiterate that most of them can't wander from their classroom to the bathroom without chaos ensuing. Sorry, baby. This doesn't even cover the impact on teachers and the All-for-One staff. The fact that you're cutting an instructional assistant next year in Union's planning room when, given the number of IEPs and behavioral issues, those resources should be ramped up, and the number of long-term substitutes or those with provisional licenses currently teaching our kids in the district. What happens to my fifth grader's access to All-for-One when he's no longer at Union and will now be writing an entry in Diary of the Wimpy Kid because he's 10, terrified and afraid of being bullied by the kids that now tower over him? As working parents, we are counting on All-for-One next year, but there's an agenda and my concerns aren't really a part of that. This brings me to the issue of David Cohn's resignation. My son will speak directly on his thoughts about Principal Cohn and the move to Riverside, but just let me say this. I have not always been a fan of David. We have certainly had our run-ins, David, if you're listening, and last year at this time, we tussled hard over an issue. I didn't like him much. I was passionate as a mother, but he was just as passionate in support of his teachers and the staff at Union. I may not have agreed with him in the moment, but I admired his passion, his care, his concern, and his integrity. Nobody can question that. He pushes back. And frankly, I think y'all don't like it. He has worked for the district for 15 years and has turned that school around in his 6 years there. His faculty, staff, and the kids love him, and I don't mean that lightly. They love him. There will be faculty resignations when he leaves. Count on it. He is resigning largely due to the lack of support this board and the administration has given him, and he has no plan, nowhere to go. You should not be accepting his resignation tonight. You should be begging for this man to stay in his role as principal of Union School. Many of us woke up this morning to a rogue, uncertain world. It's scary out there right now for a lot of us. Can we at least expect transparency and integrity from our local governing bodies? Is it too much to ask? That's my thoughts coming from myself, a number of faculty, a number of staff, a number of parents. And I know my son also wants to speak. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, there is no school board member acting as superintendent.
I thought the chief financial officer was.
He's not a school board member.
Okay, still unqualified, correct?
We have to have somebody in charge until we can find.
But we have a qualified person that could be asked, but wasn't. That's my point. Not the semantics of being on the school board. That's right. Tell them if you want to say about Mr. Cohn. Let me go with you. You can just say it. He wanted to come here tonight. He had dance class. He asked to come here. And what he wanted to say was that he loved Mr. Cohn. In his words, he said, Mommy, Mr. Cohn is a boulder on a mountain. And they're like the stick that's pushing him over the edge because I know he doesn't really want to leave us. He also said that he would love for all of you to go to his school and talk to them about whether or not they want to move and get their ideas and thoughts and opinions, because his words were that the kids have no voice in this, Mommy, it's not fair. And he would not be crying on me if he wasn't passionate about this.
Right.
Well, I made it no secret last week where I stand on the issue of the transition. I told some of you in private that I thought Dave was going to end up leaving. I hate being right. It's easy to be that guy who says your plan is crap, come up with something else. It's different to be the guy who says your plan is crap, here's a different idea. Well, here's a different idea. And my idea gets the pre-K out of the tech center, and it also gets the second grade access to the specialists that your plan does. and it keeps our fifth graders away from the middle school. You turn both Elm Hill and Union Street into pre-K through fifth grade schools. And you split the population down the middle. You probably wouldn't get 5 pre-K classes out of it, but you would get 4. I didn't have the time or the access to all of the information I needed to iron out every single detail that would make the plan feasible, obviously. But I think it's better than what you have, which is, in essence, a mutiny. Because the simple fact of the matter is, as things stand right now, no offense, Rick, you're great in your lane, but this ain't your lane.
It's not. Never said it was.
You've admitted it numerous times. And now instead of what, in terms of what I grew up with, what would be considered 4 3-star generals with no 4-star general over, no unity of command, you're going to have 3 3-star generals, no unity of command, trying to push something out, half-assed because you don't have enough time to do it right. My plan would almost certainly require that you roll this out in FY 26-27 instead of 25-26. But to have done this plan right, you really needed to have done that anyway. You've already got one parent here who's clearly spoken to a lot of parents and to a lot of staff, and quite frankly, so have I, because I've spent this last week talking to teachers and administrators, not all of whom have agreed with me, but most of whom have said they support my plan over this one. The question is, do you want to be rolling something out that the majority of your people actually support and want to get behind? Or do you want to have people grumbling and turning in resignations because they can't stand what they're being asked to do? Do you want a town that actually will pass your budget because they like what's in it? Or do you want to have a repeat of last year? Because unfortunately, if this current plan stays in it, I'm going to have to help torpedo it. Good evening.
Any other citizens' comments?
I understand your plan. I understand that it needs to go forward. I'll reiterate again, not the right time. Not, if you're going to affect the budget, you need to roll this out a year ahead of time. The other thing is watching this, and I sit on meetings, you guys are held by Robert's rule. And you really need to bone up on your Robert's rule. That last meeting wasn't pretty. And I'll leave you at that because I'd really like to look into that.
Any other citizens' comments? There was a hand up remotely for a second. Seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. Next up, we have our consent agenda. So we have the minutes of our regular meeting from January 6th, executive session, open session on January 13th, as well as the financial warrants. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda? You did the motion. Is there a second? A second. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, then we're on to new business. So first, we were asked by the community equity group to talk about a concern they had at Union Street or around Union Street School. I don't know if anybody's.
Carolyn Cumlin is online.
Oh, Colleen. Okay.
Hi, yes.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, so on the morning of January 6th, around like between 8 and 8:30, a member of our committee was driving by Union Street School, and they saw the N-word written in the snow on a car directly opposite from the school. She called the police so there would be a record of that, wasn't able to stay. We met about this last week as a committee. I think our major concern is for, the kids and staff and parents who may have seen it and been affected by it. So we wanted to, just ask, like, are you aware that this happened? Like, has any action been taken? Are you planning on taking any action on this?
If anybody from Union Street's on. It wasn't on school property. It was across the street on parked cars. So there was
David was.
the police department was the correct call for that.
David was on there though. Yep.
I see David.
Yeah, I'm here. Yep. We were made aware of it a few days after the fact, but none of my kids or staff came to me. So we actually didn't learn about it until someone brought me the Springfield Reporter. So no reaction from kids. I don't think kids were aware of it. I don't think staff was aware of it. It was across the street, as Caroline said. But again, I didn't get any feedback from any students or any staff about it.
Good. I mean, for the time being, we'll just keep an eye on it and make sure that as long as it doesn't happen on school property, that's where limitations end. If we see it on private property, then we can contact the police. Anything else? Next up, we have the December financial report.
Yeah, so I'll go to the bottom line. If you go page 4 of the report, page 10 of your packet, showing a net cash position as of December 31st of $5 million. We got a big state aid chunk in December. That's a large reason for that. Surplus at this point in time is showing a net negative position of 170,000, which, as you all know, has been dropping and will continue to drop. That assumes we spend every dollar we expect to spend, but we only receive the money in that we receive. If you go back to page 7 of your report, page 104, we're still forecasted to receive $5 million in state grant money. So that 170,000 should not concern you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions around the financial report? Is there a motion to accept the financial report? Just made the motion. Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion around the financial report? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next under new business, we have award asbestos abatement contract at Springfield High School.
Yeah, so we have been pretty aggressively trying to remove all the asbestos in Riverside. And high school, we accomplished completing the Riverside project this last summer. So now we're laser focused on the high school. This project will remove, replace roughly 50% of the remaining asbestos tile at the high school. Kind of spread out. I think there's a map in there to kind of show you where it was, and then how it came through and the scanning and stuff. Kind of spread out throughout the area. We went out. We've been successful last couple of years, especially in the asbestos contracting world, to get out in front of everybody else in the state. We've been successful doing that, get very aggressive numbers from contractors. Again, we experienced that again this year. If you recall last week when we talked about the budget, I forget the number, but you know, there's a couple $100,000 reduction in that budget line item. That was how part of the reduction because we got these real numbers as opposed to the estimates that were used on the budget at the time. This is only for the asbestos abatement. We still have money in the budget for the new tile. We've got estimates on those, but we have not done. We'll be going out for bid on those, assuming the board awards this contract tonight. We'll be going out for bid on the new tile installation next week or two. So administration is requesting you approve contract with Catamount. They've done a lot of work in our buildings. Very happy with them. Very good price.
Is there a motion to award the asbestos abatement to Catamount Environmental?
So moved.
Get the motion, second. Seconded. Any further discussion around the asbestos abatement? Those in favor? Okay, next round to staffing matters. So first we have an administration appointment. So Beth Smith, assistant principal at Elmwood School.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, just wasn't sure if you were ready for me. So Beth Smith has applied for the position, and we are excited to bring her on board. Beth is local to the area. She grew up and graduated from Green Mountain and joined the military. She has a career in the military. She has expertise working specifically with children preschool through grade 2. She's currently working down in Bellows Falls, and we're fortunate to be able to snag her up. She has a lot of expertise around behavior supports, trauma-informed practices, and we're really excited to bring her onto our team.
Is there a motion to appoint Beth? Steve, any motion for second? Just seconded. Any further discussion on this?
Yeah, I look forward to having Beth. I did check with some friends in VF, and they think highly of you, Beth.
Thank
I'm looking forward to you coming in, being I spent a lot of time in Elm Hill. I look forward to you coming in and helping the staff, improving some of our issues that are in town. So welcome.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, next under staffing matters, we have administrative resignation. So David Killen, principal at Union Street School. David, I don't know if you want to say anything or.
On my own behalf? No, I'm good. Thank you.
I was very saddened to get David's resignation. As was mentioned before, he's been here 15 years, served in the assistant superintendent role for a short time before being the principal at Union Street. Worked together with him since I've been on the board. Sad to see him go. If there's any other.
I would echo those sentiments. I have my 5th grader, and I was saddened to hear that my 2nd grader would not happen next year. I've worked very closely with David over the last 3 years, my 5th grader, and he's been great to work with. So I'm gonna miss him.
Yep, I agree. When my kiddo was in 5th grade, he righted the ship. And so it was nice to have my son and his time at Union Street on a high note. So I appreciate everything he's done for the district and for the schools.
Okay, is there a motion to accept David's resignation? Steve made the motion. Is there a second? Seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next under staffing matters, we have a reconsideration of the leave request.
Hi, I'm back. All right, so your primary concern in giving me an unpaid leave instead of a paid leave, as I requested, was financial. So the information we received in July was that the cost of me and the sub would be $184,000-ish. Whereas, speaking of real numbers as opposed to estimates, like Rick said, the cost for my sub might be around $56,000 or so. That's what Rick's educated guess was in October. I do not know exactly the number that the person that was hired will receive, but it's not $82,000 or $83,000 as you have been told. Rick gave me the day, which I included in your packet, the numbers of what paid leave would cost the school district for me, which would be $41,000-ish if the pay and benefits remained intact, and less if some creative solution is agreed upon. So that's about the numbers. I just wanted to reiterate, and I gave you my Fulbright application this time so you could see the details of what I was proposing, that my application was designed to support the district goals, and that, when I returned from Columbia, that I would put my leadership and whatever guidance I can, provide, and my experience sort of at the service of the district, including experience with the development of a system for logging flexible pathways, which I piloted with Nate McNaughton and other colleagues at the middle school, and whatever I find out while I'm in Columbia. What I hadn't talked about was, what I could do while I was gone still. And I think that working with Jeff Van Deer and Kelly Tarbell at the middle school to continue to develop the curriculum so that we can fully implement it at the beginning of next year would be really important in furthering the district goals around this new way of delivering instruction and increasing student independence, so that by the time they get to high school, they can make informed choices about flexible pathways that they might want to pursue. I think that while budget is a huge concern for you guys, because it's the most community-facing aspect of your job, or the thing that really creates the greatest difficulty for people and the greatest emotion, perhaps. I also think that the school board is in charge of sort of advising on curriculum matters, and we've supported the administration's sort of move towards guaranteed and viable curriculum and flexible pathways and portrait of a graduate and all those things that you've heard about. And if I'm still working with my colleagues this year, that's more likely to be implementable at the beginning of next school year. Whereas if I'm not around, I don't believe that the 7th grade documents will be completed, and so that implementation would not occur immediately at the beginning of next school year. I gave you a lot of papers to read, so I know you've looked through some of them, or at least the ones that I hopefully noted for you to particularly look at. I don't know if you have any questions.
Questions from the side? Is there a motion to approve the legal license request?
The leave of absence is already approved, right?
Paid leave of absence.
Just wanted to make sure, because that was
Yeah,
definitely.
no, a few friends contacted me and said, they're not going to try to take your leave back. I'm like, no, I asked if I could go again to, give you some updated information to see if that would change a decision. Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, we're into old business. So first is a superintendent search update, which would be for next school year. Our search consultant, Tracy Wren, is online.
I'm here. Would you like me to go ahead and give my update?
Yes, please.
Sure. So my goal is to take 5 minutes or less of your time. I have 3 main objectives for my check-in with you. Just want to give you an ultra brief update on work to date. In the interest of transparency and keeping the community informed, I'd like to ask if the board would consider affirming or ratifying the committee appointments and give you a few tidbits of information about what to expect next in terms of timeline. So the updates are an affirmation, I think, of some of the information shared last time. We've posted the position and advertised it, and we have received applications. We have established the committee under the authority of your designee to do that and within the constructs that you shaped in the committee charge you approved. And there is a web page that's been created to help keep both applicants and the community informed of the progress. We also put out a survey to request feedback on the priority, skills, and attributes for the next superintendent. We didn't get a lot of response. The committee will have a chance to start working with what we did get at their next meeting, which is actually tomorrow morning. I did inform board members of who the committee appointees are. Would it help for me to read them briefly?
Yes, please, Tracy.
Okay, so the committee appointees are Troy Palmer, Bindi Hathorn, Marissa Nielsen, Heather Taylor, Rick Pembroke, Jason Waysville, and Veronica Goslin. And again, just to be transparent and communicate with the community, I wonder if the board would be interested in either formally making a motion to affirm or ratify the appointments that you delegated authority to make.
Is there a motion to affirm the search committee? You made the motion. Is there a second? Just a second. Any discussion around the search committee? All those in favor? Aye. I'm abstaining since I'm on the search.
Thank you. I will work with your team to update the information on the website, so it's also available there. As I said, the committee's meeting tomorrow, and one of our tasks is to set some dates for future meetings, so I'll have a little more clarity on the next steps going forward. But I wanted to alert the board to the idea that we may want to start doing some work together in preparation for interviews and contract negotiations around February 10th or 24th. That work would all be executive session and could be expected to be about an hour's worth of work. We could also consider a special meeting at that time. So I'll be able to stay in touch with Troy since he's on the committee and chair, but I just wanted to put that on your radar for your work plan going forward. And lastly, I'd say board members and anybody else, if you have feedback or questions about the process, feel free to reach out to me. My email is on the website.
Thank you, Tracy.
Any questions?
Any questions for Tracy? Yep.
Will there be opportunity for public interviews, so to speak, with the candidates?
Yeah,
It was fantastic.
the typical process involves visits by finalists to the school community. And as we get a little farther in the process, I'll work with the committee administration and board to plan that. And yes, some interaction and engagement with the community, with students, with faculty and staff, school visits. Those are all common activities that we will consider as we're designing visits for finalists to help inform the board and give them some additional information to help them make their final decision.
Any other questions for Tracy?
Can I just say something?
Yep.
Why do we deny people that have had issues with district to be on the committee?
We had more applicants than we had capacity to serve, and we used the information that was available on the survey tool to try and create a balanced committee that represents a wide variety of perspectives of people in the district. I hope that the committee's work will reflect that we did a good job with that. Beyond that, I would say that there are additional opportunities for people to contribute to the process. Unfortunately, the survey was one of those opportunities and we didn't get a lot of response. I will reflect with the committee about what we can infer from that and if there's anything we'd like to do about that. But beyond that, there will be opportunities when candidates are around and the community members will have an opportunity to meet those candidates, hear from them, and we'll create a process for everyone who would like to have input when we get to the finalist stage of the process.
Who is we, as in who is we that selected the committee?
The designee from the board was Troy, and I assisted him with that.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Tracy? No, we'll move on. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're into version 3 of the budget discussion. I guess before we get into the budget, is there any thoughts from the board around the rate shift comments?
Yeah, I can. I mean, obviously, I voted for it to be a year later. However, as a board member, the board voted to make this happen this next year. As such, I'm really concerned with this rollout and how we as a community get behind it. Just sitting down with my 5th grader and, it came up in discussion that his teacher may go to Riverside with him. And if this budget doesn't pass, so now he's planning for that teacher to go there. And if this budget doesn't pass, how do we go back to our kids and say that, oh, just kidding. No, we're gonna, change face and make an adjustment to the plan. And I think as we work to build out this budget and work to build out this marketing plan, my hope would be as a board member that we can get behind it and support it and build it in a way that we can make sure all students are supported wherever they are.
So the direction as we understood it from the last meeting was to go back and consider or put in 2 teaching staff and the IA position back at Union. I've done that financially. David, Rachel, Alina, myself. I think Karen wasn't here for that one. So the 4 of us met and conceptually came up with a support center model that is conceptually, because this what I've got is a budget number there's still a lot of tweaking that needs to be done to figure out how exactly this is going to be delivered.
And Rachel and David are both on.
Next September. But conceptually, and those two can correct me if I'm wrong, Alina can correct me if I'm wrong, or if I misspeak. We'll utilize two spaces. I don't know if they're totally classroom spaces in each building, but 2 spaces in each building. The reason why we're currently considering special education teachers is for them to serve the intensive needs students in those buildings. And did we ever get those numbers? Actually, there's so few, I don't think we can actually say publicly. There's only a handful in each building. And those intensive needs teachers would serve the IEP needs of those intensive needs students. Wouldn't be a full-time because there's not enough kids to create a full-time position. So those professional staff would then support, model in classrooms best practices for special ed. We've got 1 BCBA currently hired. We're currently trying to find a second BCBA. The intention is to turn those instructional assistants into RBTs. And don't ask me what all this alphabet soup means. Somebody smarter than me is going to have to tell you. Who will work with and support the behavioral issues in those buildings. We still have a lot of fine tuning to do and how that structure works. But again, from a budgetary standpoint, you can see here as I posted, it's about $217,000 for the 2 teachers, about $81,000 for the instructional assistant. That is in version 3 of the budget. Put that. Rachel, David, did I come close to teeing up what we talked about?
Yes, that sounds like what we described and determined would be the best fit for the students.
Yeah, I think so, Rick.
I'm sorry, David?
I said yes, I believe so, Rick. Yep.
So in addition to those 2 changes, there was an increase of 1 long-term weighted average daily membership, which results in a slight reduction in the tax rate. And there is a reduction in tech center tuition for RVTC from what I had estimated, because I was just guessing. But they finally gave me their tuition numbers, and that was a reduction of $30,000. So those are the changes in version 3 from version 2. Any questions on any of that before I get to the tax impact of all that stuff?
So are these positions currently in this school year's budget?
No.
Okay. These would be additions to bring the intensive needs classrooms back. Does that, like, capture that correctly or not?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to call them an intensive need classroom because there's not enough population and enough IEP services to. And my understanding, David, Alina, Rachel, correct me. Pick a number. Say there's 10 of them. There's not. But just pick 10. This teacher's not going to sit down with 10 kids in that classroom all day long. This teacher's going to bring 1, 2 at most into the time, work with that child, those children. They'll go back, they'll bring in somebody else, they'll go back, they'll have downtime that they'll go into classrooms and help support those other classrooms. So I don't want to give the impression that it's a dedicated, self-contained, intensive needs classroom.
And maybe a question for Rachel, David, do we feel this will address some of the behavioral issues we're seeing?
I'm sorry. Can I say something?
I'll come back to you.
Perfect.
I do. I think this is going to be a huge help of getting us going in the right direction. Having that person with the certification that can support our current instructional assistants and under the BCBA, move them towards the alphabet soup that Rick described of RBTs, RBIs. I apologize. But I do think this is a step in the right direction. That person being able to support some of our learners that are not on grade level, that need some extra skill building, extra time, they're going to have that ability and those resources to be able to help those children.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
So Hannah, do you guys all have kids with special intensive needs? You know what it's like to have kids with that intensive needs? So why do I have to threaten for an attorney to have someone from the district call me back about my children that attend this district? Why do I have to talk? Why do I have to wait weeks to hear back from someone for my child that attends the school district? When they're intensive needs kids who have disabilities and trauma issues. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks for someone or the after school program who has my children to have any answer from the district about anything that involves them. Do you guys know what it's like to have kids like that? That's all. You're talking about them, but you know what it's like. I've contacted Karen, the superintendent. I worked for this district and I was a para for the year, and I was a para for 10 years before I came to this district with my children. I worked for Woodstock and Hartford, and I've never experienced such a difficult time trying to advocate for my children that I do when I've been here, when my other half's family has been here their entire lives. I'm not trying to come off as a jerk or anything, but I shouldn't have to threaten to go to an attorney. That's for my children.
Yeah, 110%. It disturbs me as a board member that you let me go this way. I've had some special needs, so I totally understand what you're saying. So.
Take your time.
Just take your time.
It's just not fair. As a taxpayer in this town, I own a home. I came here, and my kids get treated so terribly from staff and otherwise because they're not perfect kids. So it's very hard for me as someone who's spent time as an early childhood educator and a parent for so many years to come here and have to fight so hard for my kids to feel like they belong somewhere. It's very sad.
Rick, can you follow up with the board with this? Where's our special ed director?
Karen doesn't respond to anything unless I threaten to call an attorney.
She had a family emergency.
No, we can't talk about personal.
She had a family emergency today. She was planning on being.
We'll make sure we follow up on this. Thanks, Sam.
Any questions about the changes?
Got one more hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Suzette?
Well, I just wanted to say that you know, what she had to say is what I've had to say, and what everybody else has had to say is that we don't have enough support staff. And the really big thing that this district needs to focus on is in the next negotiating cycle, we need to somehow incentivize paras to come and stay. I've been in contact with multiple families who have either chosen to homeschool their children or are thinking about homeschooling their children or are seeking outside help because their children are not receiving the support that they are supposed to have. My child is spending probably hours throughout the school day on computer games as classroom management, and I'm not faulting his teacher or his principal or his anything because there aren't staff to control these students. We need to somehow incentivize paras to stay in our district so that high needs, low needs, whatever their needs are, there are adults to educate our children.
I think that's the core of my question is to not only David and Rachel, who have been asked a couple times, but also to Riverside and the high school. Mindy and Nate, does this budget support the schools, right? The school board aren't the ones in the building. So this is our opportunity to make sure that we have the positions in place in the budget to support our students at every level. And does this budget support them? That's the core of my question. I'd like to hear from each of them just to affirm that it is, or if it's not, what could be done to support that.
Nate, we'll start with you.
Sure, yeah, and I don't mind jumping in. You know, it's like when I met with the budget committee, you know, our charge was to build a budget with the greatest probability of success to support our kids through the transition. And I do think that what's on the table for Riverside does do that.
Thanks, Dave. Rachel, I see you next.
Yes, to answer your question, I do believe it does. I'm very excited about the first grade pairs that I was able to put into the budget because I think that's a huge improvement with providing additional support in the classrooms, consistency, the minutes needed for students on IEPs, and then being able to add in this SPED teacher is really going to be a critical turning point for not only managing behaviors, but again, supporting our students that need some extra time.
Thanks, Richard. Bindi?
I mean, I think it's difficult to try to build a budget when we're not sure what's going to happen next year. We don't know what changes can come, what students can come into the building. I mean, if you're looking at discipline data, which I think we were supposed to do a presentation for the board around different things that we were seeing in each of our buildings. At the high school many, many years ago, we did away with our in-school suspension room. So, you know, we don't have a lot of resources in order to support students with, you know, some behavioral challenges. So would it be good to have, I mean, planning room really isn't the appropriate term for a high school setting, but, you know, we could also use something like that we could, you know, provide a staff member who could work with students around behaviors and how to build strategies and give some opportunities for those kids to stay in school, pick up some strategies and skills, and not just have to rely on out of school suspensions, lunch detentions, or flex detention. So, you know, I mean, if you're asking what's a major support, I would say some sort of a, you know, behavioral room where we can offer in school, because I know that that's something that we hear from families a lot. Whatever happened to in-school suspension? And it's like, it was cut years ago. So yeah, so I think that in a nutshell kind of answers that question, I hope, if that's what Jess was asking.
Thanks, Bindi. David?
Yeah, Jess, I mean, this would help, but also bear in mind, even adding these two positions back gets Union Street back to where it was 3 years ago. So I had a planning room teacher, I had 3 IAs. So this gets us back to that. It's not anything above and beyond. You know, to be honest, I'm super concerned about Union Street School. I feel like it's the school that sort of gets the least discussion and attention and support. And I know I'm biased towards that school because I live there every day. You know, historically, paras have had the option to stay at Elm, and so they've formed these relationships with the kids, and then they go to like a kindergarten class, and so our third grade is left with nothing. So I'm deeply concerned for Union Street School, and I will do everything I can until my contract is up June 30. But I don't feel like we're doing enough or talking enough about how to support Union Street School, particularly with what I've heard in terms of some of the behaviors that are at Elm. Anyway, yes, I'm concerned.
Thanks, David. Ray, you
I think we had the workings of what you were talking about, Jess, right up until the point that this transition got passed. And I said it last week, I'll say it again, this budget was already going to be hard to pass. I mean, honestly, I could sit back and twiddle my thumbs and watch it fail at this point now, but I'm not going to. Can I assume, since no discussion was made, that there's no interest in considering my proposal?
I mean, for me, that would have to come from the administrators considering that, not from us, because the logistics lie with them.
I know that there was an administrator who said that they preferred my plan. I'm not going to call them out, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that when my help was asked for, it was said that you wanted a bulldog who was going to stand up based on principle. You got that. I'm telling you right now, you're going to keep getting that.
So kids are in school like just over a quarter of the day by hour, and then you spend maybe another quarter hour sleeping, and that's only 180 days a year. What is done or what is proposed to help families, right? Because I guess in my opinion, the reality is the school district is not going to fix a lot of these behavioral issues, right? They can just help manage them and provide solutions and things for outside the home where parents really need to take what's being done in the school and continue that at home. So I guess my question is, what is the transition from the school to support families at home? Does that play a role into any of the new positions?
Bill, question. I can't answer that, though.
That'd be the principals, I can't answer that one.
And phone a friend for administrator help on that.
Maybe it's just rhetorical, possibly. You know, I think it's unrealistic to expect the school to fix every single problem, especially given the limited amount of time that students are in school. But I do feel that there's an obligation from the district to provide whatever that support looks like, whether it's partner agency with HCRS or some sort of outside counseling, or maybe it's that, I know the planning, the P word is not appropriate, but the planning room to coordinate that care and those ideas from school to home, where parents really can have a great effect on their kids' success or failure. I don't necessarily need an answer.
Yes.
So this is where I moved. In December, I brought up the idea of community schools. And I had sent the school board a lot of links and a lot of research around what is a community school. And Springfield is in a really unique position because of all of the services that we already have in town. What a community school is really intense. There's no way Springfield could pull off a community school in what it actually is next year. You would have to hire a community school coordinator. There are grants out there And Vermont has community schools. There's actually a state statute that provides for it. And I've emailed those things on to all the school board members. Again, it's really intense. And I can share that with you. I can share the email. I have contacts for people who have possibly grant funding for these first couple of years. But again, it takes a position to really help coordinate. Like you said, it takes a lot of coordinating with all of those outside services. And what you do is you make the school the hub for HCRS, restorative practices, police department, the hospital, North Star. Think of all the things Springfield already has. You bring them in. Doctors, dentists, laundry, all the things, BCBAs, HCRS, everything. You bring it to the families. You help the families because you're right. We have it. Our families need those supports, and it isn't. There's no stigma. We are partners. It's not an us versus you. There's no judgment. It's just we're in this together. These children are yours, but we have them a quarter of the day, and we also want to provide them. So, but again, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of coordination, and it does take a shift. And if this is where the board wants to go, in our community, it is a commitment. It's going to take a couple of years to get up there. And so, again, it's there. You need a position. So, but research shows it works. Yeah, and it really, the whole state of Kentucky, I think the entire state of Kentucky does this. So it's proven to work.
I'm gonna go here first. Say their hand up first. Colleen Barlow.
Hi, Colleen Barlow, school nurse. I just wanted to piggyback on what Allison was saying. So just so everybody knows, at one point we did kind of have, honestly, leaning towards what is quote unquote the community school. So we had the wellness committee, which is based off the whole school, whole community, whole child from the Vermont Department of Health and Agency of Education. So the student is the middle, and what surrounds them is we ensure that they're healthy, safe, engaged, supported, challenged. And then in that wellness committee, we had people from the community. So whether it be HCRS was at the table, or we had the health department at the table, we had a parent, we had a student, had teachers from different aspects in education, whether it was physical education, health education. So, I mean, I think we honestly had a good start to it. The wellness committee honestly has fallen by the wayside since COVID. I really think that's something that we should think about. And sorry, my dinner timer is going off. That's something that we should definitely reconsider. And I would love to see get back off the ground and going again, because we really had a good thing going when we had the wellness committee going, because there's really a purpose for this WSDC model, and it really shows improved learning and improved health for kids. And if kids aren't healthy, they can't learn.
So just to like kind of go off what Colleen was saying, the Springfield Health Department, North Star, they do not have a child psychologist or a child psychiatrist that will help prescribe meds. So a lot of these kids from the district are literally going to their primary care doctor, and they're like, we're not going to change meds. We're just going to keep doing what we're doing because we don't feel comfortable changing them. So now we have all these kiddos like my own who are on meds that probably aren't the best solution for them, but we're struggling because we don't have a psychiatrist that's going to help prescribe meds to these kids. So we have a lot of, it's kind of coming around full circle where we're struggling with behaviors and issues when there's not a doctor to help prescribe meds or help change meds or to help fix that in the district. On with that.
A brief story and a perspective and a question. I am currently in the situation where I've got almost 18-year-old who I had to force the district to be tested after people both in this room and on the call repeatedly ignored for 11 years written correspondence asking me to do it. They knew there was something wrong. Until you're in a position when you have a kid that is essentially on the 9th grade scale in terms of coursework, has never been supported how he should have been, was diagnosed with 2 specific learning disabilities, and is struggling to figure out how he's going to finish school. That's a mandate from his parents. You don't know what it's like to deal with the things that are being talked about here. He's been kicked out of this school twice for things that would have been protected that he properly had an IEP. And it's extremely frustrating. So I feel this pain super deep. Now, I think this is an interesting move. And it's a good step in the right direction. I say all that, I gotta wear that bird. The question I have is, would this person be specifically somewhat trained in looking for these things? I saw them, I asked about them, people ignored it. That needs to be front and center to whoever, if this is going to be a real thing, to be able to spot these things, and they can be very subtle. One of the biggest manifestations of the 2 specific learning disabilities my son was diagnosed with are behavioral things. Outbursts because they don't know, they can't speak right. They don't know what the answer are. They're asked to do a lot of work that they can't even understand what they're being asked to do. Their minds work differently. There's nothing wrong with them. That's just their outlet. So, back to the question, will this person, is the idea that this person might have some ability to spot these things early like that? Because that is when it happens. There's comments about Union Street, spot on. It needs to be dealt with early. If you can catch it, you can help fit it, put it in the right direction, keep these kids on a good path. So that was a question. I don't know if Rick had that.
I don't know what person you're talking about. I don't know if you're talking about.
I'm just
Alice's
speaking
person.
generally. Anybody who wants to answer is fine with me.
I don't know what person you're talking about.
The behavioral person you're talking about for being in, like, to have 1 or 2 kids at a time.
The BCBA? Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Principal, can somebody help me with that? I don't. BCBA's identify behavioral issues and write plans that somebody else carries out, correct?
Yeah, that's right, Rick.
Answer your question.
They'll also do, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. They'll also do a functional behavioral analysis as well. That's part of their job and function. So they will observe the student in classes, do questionnaires to the family and teachers. And then from that, as you were saying, we'll write a plan to support the student that will be shared with staff or the teachers. And then do check-ins and try to provide support for the teachers who are trying to implement the plan.
I'll chime in just real quick. Oh, sorry, Rick. A big kind of part of their job is to look at data as time goes on and try to identify patterns and triggers and modify the behavior plan as the student moves through the years. So they're making sure that the behaviors that they're seeing are addressed and making sure that they're modifying the interventions to make sure the student is successful.
So the one thing I think I do know is BCBA stands for Board Certified Behavioral Analyst, right? That means anything to you? Because it means that somebody's certified them to do something.
Yeah, if there are the qualifications in there, it's fantastic, man. They would just take somebody paying attention to grades or what the struggles are to see these things.
And so
I'm a parent and I figured it out.
So the other thing I wanted to add was, help me, because you're a little better than I am, but we've had some contracted BCBAs through HCRS, Patterns, whoever. We've been looking to hire our own, and the person we currently have was our first successful hire a month or 2 ago. So we're just getting started in this realm.
I've got 3 hands. I don't know who raised their hand first.
I think he was first.
Okay.
And this is maybe Rick, maybe Jess. Where are we? So the school-wide dyslexic screening that was in place for this year, that every kid, which I think would go along with it. Question: where are we in that? How far have we made it into it, and what are we seeing for numbers that we were guaranteed that it was going to happen this year?
Because we've been working on it for multiple
Yes.
I'll assume we both-
So how many kids have been done, and when do we expect to have that dyslexic screening so that parents aren't left in the, this realm of not knowing?
So within the screening, it happens with our iReady diagnostic, which all students already took in the fall. And any student that was below a certain mark, depending on their grade level, and if we look at just K3, because that's the big mandate that we have, but we actually do the obedience testing all the way up to 5th grade here. They look at another benchmark to see if students fall below that level. If a student is below a certain level in both the iReady diagnostic as well as the obedience, then they will get additional support. The students are right now taking the diagnostic again to see if any intervention that they've already received has been working, and letters for any student that did fall below that mark did already go home this month. And it's one of those we're going to continue to work on interventions. If a student was, I'm going to get like kind of into the weeds here. If a student was lower in comprehension, that does not necessarily mean it's a possibility for dyslexia. If a student is lower in phonics, then it could be. And quite a few of our teachers, as well as interventionists, do have one Gillingham training, which looks specifically and helps specifically with possibility of dyslexia. We do not diagnose dyslexia. That's a medical diagnosis. We simply screen for possibilities and provide intervention. When a student then goes into special education, I'm not a special educator, and that is not my department, but when a student does go in, they can, again, provide additional testing, which could signal the possibility of having dyslexia. But from my understanding of talking to special educators, we do not diagnose. It's a medical diagnosis for doctors to do. We simply provide supports for a student that may have dyslexia. They will also not call it dyslexia in special education. They will call it specific learning disability.
So what about the rest of the grades? You just said that you guys have only done, so we were told that this was school-wide, and that was implemented school-wide.
Yep, so K5 gets the iReady as well as the obedience. 6-8 gets the iReady, 6-9 gets the iReady. 6-8 has an additional, and I can't remember, I feel like it's called STAR. Sorry that I don't remember the actual name, of the intervention, and they also look at some other different pieces based on phonics as well as comprehension, and they have an entire intervention in our middle school supporting that specifically. It is a new program, so we're looking at data very closely to see how well our students are responding to that intervention.
So then you're like sending to Stern Center or places like that to get additional testing when you see these check marks that aren't lining up, or what? You're just looking at it and then, okay,
No, we're providing intervention and seeing how students are responding to the intervention and communicating with families. And that's why the letter went out this month, and I believe through all of our parent-teacher conferences, there's communication with how students are progressing.
do you expect these parents to know what to do?
I do not have that expectation.
I'm thinking there's a little bit of a miss here. Like, there's parents that advocate for their kids and know how to do it. There's parents that don't know how to do it, and that's what you're there for. And I think we got probably a gap here that isn't being covered. That definitely from what we've heard, and I think we need to be looking at that.
Yeah, I
sorry. So, back to the BCBA thing. So we moved here in 2022 in January. My son was obviously having some issues behaviorally from past trauma. HCRS, got brought in to be with him. His BCBA that he had from HCRS was allowing him to watch YouTube videos about guns and all this other stuff. And then I was having to come in and pick him up every single day because, he was being inappropriate and they were never allowing him in a classroom. He had to be in his, I don't know what she was, this was before Rachel. He was stuck in a classroom all day, this one little room, and not allowed to be in his classroom because of his behaviors, because his BCBA was allowing him to watch videos about guns and violence, and they were, sending him home because of these behaviors. So I think outside sourcing of BCBAs can sometimes not be the best solution. People do want to help kids. Like, I wanted to be a parent, I wanted to help kids, but as someone with 10 years experience, they paid $18 an hour. You can't survive on a family with that. Like, you can't have kids and, try to pay bills on that. So I think that, a big issue is sometimes outsourcing, but not getting qualified people because you're not getting paid enough money to provide that service. He just got switched from a para that was being severely inappropriate with him with his words and saying he was going to kick our dog and a lot of other things. So I think the screening process for people for paras and BCBAs is kind of beyond a background check, and everything else is kind of, I don't even know. But that's kind of been a conflict, is qualified people that want to help kids and want to do what's best for them. Because I know I did. And I was a single parent with 2 kids out of a very traumatic, trauma-filled relationship with their father. So for me, I was always advocating very hard for them, and to have, to go into school and trust your kids with other people and then have them ethically fail when I was at Elm with my son is like, sets it off for their education to be totally derailed. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from as someone who, worked in, went to Woodstock and went to Hartford and worked there and worked at all these other districts. And then you come in and feel like you're not being heard as a parent, not being heard as someone who's educated with all of this. So it's kind of that.
I think next was Mary Ann Block.
I think Jody had her hand up too.
She took it down.
Thank you. I would like to know how the school district is going to meet every children's needs, specifically around the iReady testing, children that are on IEPs, 504s, that the school district cannot follow their plans and meet their needs because there's not enough staff to do so. Specifically around literacy interventions, when parents did receive this week notification that their children had scored significantly lower on the iReady testing. Now, it does not guarantee that there's going to be interventions. It says that child was identified through assessments and that children need extra support. And then it highlights 5 specific areas that steps that may be taken, does not say that it will be taken. When I specifically asked the school for more testing for my child, we'll have to wait until iReady testing is completed. iReady testing is completed, received the letter that was from testing back in September, still waiting on the test scores that they just took. it's very disheartening when you're told that your child has needs that need to be met. The school district can't meet those needs because there isn't enough staff and will be put on a waiting list. When there is a plan in place and received support last year, excelled with the additional support, and now this year hasn't received any support to date and is now having behavioral issues. It is not always a medication adjustment or medication is the answer. My family did take our child to the doctors, and frankly, the Springfield medical system is quite upset with the Springfield school district because they're not meeting the needs of the children, and medication is not going to cure somebody that has a disability. So I would like some answers as a parent, what the school district is going to do to support these children and the educators. In no way, shape, or form do I feel that the teacher, the administration, is not trying to support my child. They have worked with our family, they've worked with our children. And I am very saddened that Mr. Cohn is resigning. He has been wonderful to both of my children. He has been great support, and he has the respect of his staff, and the children love him. And I think that's a mistake that you accepted his resignation tonight. Thank you.
Just before this topic came up, it was on my list. I know from a prior meeting, we had discussed the dyslexia screening, that there was additional screenings happening with this January iReady. I was going to be asking for an update in February, so I just want to make sure that we do circle back to that on a lot of the topics that have been brought up, both the screenings, the results of the screenings, the iReady, and then as well as the interventions and what we're doing. I know part of that was also my question within this budget as well, when we get a little bit further into the staffing and the interventionalists, just asking about if we have enough to support students. And we can come back to that when we get to that next page, because we haven't made it very far.
I just, one other point regarding the dyslexia screenings, just a suggestion, I guess. If the results of those two tests are resulting in some cases in you guys providing extra supports, I would suggest that perhaps a letter to the parents should happen at that point, with a suggestion that they might want to seek additional testing on their own to seek out a diagnosis. I personally find it highly inappropriate that if you have information that could lead to a diagnosis, that you're going forward with steps to correct it without the parents already knowing about it, and giving them the opportunity to seek out a possible diagnosis on their own, when your steps to correct it could possibly skew the diagnosis moving forward. That, as someone who has dyslexia and ADHD, I am very neurodivergent, as most people can probably tell, because I often have the tack of a door. So, you know, there's more to it than that, obviously, but, you know, just trying to lighten the mood a little bit. But, you know, sorry, I'm getting flustered a little bit. The continuing trend here is lack of communication. To cut out a part of what Samuel L. Jackson would say, do it, communicate. You know, that's to everybody. You know, the unspoken.
And you have two up there.
Three up there. Jason Waitsville.
Yeah, hello. I just wanted to circle back, and it sounds like we're there with the dyslexia issue. I have a few children in the school district, and my oldest child is now in 6th grade, and he was diagnosed with a problem in an IEP in 2nd grade, and we had to fight to get the dyslexia diagnosis dealt with. And he's currently in 6th grade, and we're having to go outside the school still to deal with his issues because the school district doesn't have anybody trained in Norton Gillingham, and we're not able to provide him with what he needs. And it's been a very frustrating process for us. And I feel like we've advocated well for our child, and Mr. Cohen was there much of the time and through the Union Street years with him, and we advocated and dealt with his staff, and now we're dealing with the Riverside staff, and it's a continuing theme here in Springfield where you meet with people, we talk about what we're going to do. There's lack of communication within the building to even discuss what we talked about, and it's never actually dealt with, and you're going outside the school district to have your child's needs met. It's just a very frustrating situation. And I just was hoping that, maybe we can actually sit down and come up with some productive steps as to how we're going to deal with it in the future.
Thank you. Jody Patel.
Yeah, hi. I guess I'm excited that you're thinking about bringing on new staff. That brings a lot of joy to me. But I also know, like, you're bringing on the BCBA. They're just a data collector that come up with their functional behavior reports. But we need people in the buildings to implement them. We're having a staffing issue in a lot of our buildings. We aren't able to fill them. So if we get a BCBA, we don't have the staff to implement what the BCA is telling us to do. I don't know how to cure that.
Thank you. Suzette.
So I have two things. One is actually echoing what Jody said. I said this during budget committee meetings that a BCBA does nothing because they can formulate a plan, but unless you have staff to implement the plan, it doesn't matter. And those are people who we need to really think about when we negotiate or whatever our support staff looks like. We need those people. The other thing that I would say, and I don't know how many people have thought about this at all, but budget committee and school board and everybody, the members of these committees are public knowledge. And I had a fairly disturbing experience when I Googled Ray Rigney and New Orleans. So if anybody is interested in Ray's background, you might want to do that.
Do we test for the selection?
We screen for the.
No, I don't want to. Do we test for dyslexia? Because all I'm getting now is parents are getting information, but we're not testing for dyslexia. So they have to go to outside school, and I know firsthand. So I know this. I had to take my grandson out of the district to get tested. So are we going to make plans so that our kids can be tested, or do the parents going to have to continue taking them out of the district?
I don't foresee any plans to test for dyslexia unless we have a medical doctor doing that here.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Along the same lines, this is mildly facetious, but this, I already have autocorrect that have spell check. It's all online, right? Like a tablet-based or Chromebook-based. Will it pick up if somebody unintentionally spells a P backwards? Or a D or a B, which is a sign that there's something there potentially. So the concern is that this is a data capture exercise and you're gonna miss a lot of things. Sometimes the signs are subtle. They're enough to raise interest. Spelling, just constructive words is a good measure, but not always the ticket. So I would urge there be a handwritten component to this stuff, so that there's a real test. Anybody can put whatever they want on the computer, make it sound good, they can record it, whatever. They can make it be whatever they want it to be. It's one of the dangers of using digital tools to identify human problems. So I urge the testing to be outside of the digital realm. Use the digital realm, that's fine too. It helps add things up faster. The other question I had was, how long does it take to administer a single, let's just say phase 1 test for a student?
It depends on the student. I'm going to correct something really quick, Mr. Crawford. I said I do not have any plans, but if we're looking at dyslexia, it really is a special education piece.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was hoping you would say.
okay, so I apologize for
I was hoping
speaking
you would say,
outside of my lane.
you don't, it's a special ed issue.
Yes.
Which I knew, so I totally
So
understand.
I just wanted to correct that real quick. Sir, it really depends on the student. Sometimes it can take several days, sitting for several sessions, and sometimes a student can finish it in one day, depending on the age and level and where they're at. But it does, test does change depending on the answers.
Pathetic ad hominems notwithstanding, I do want to point out that one of the primary themes that has been going through tonight is how much everybody is sad that Dave Cohn is leaving. And I feel like it was unfortunate that the clues and the various cues that were being made last week were missed as to the fact that, that was one of the likely consequences. And I just hope that the board does not fail to see that what we're hearing from the community about their displeasure at his departure isn't missed as well.
Chief, go first.
I just want to, coming back real quick to the dyslexia, and we can get into a lot of this hopefully at a future meeting. But from the state of Vermont, and I'm not sure if it's Act 139 or 28, but the screening tools that we use need to be evidence-based and capable of identifying early signs of dyslexia. So that would be something that maybe when we get to this in February, we can just confirm that our screening tools do meet that. Sorry?
What's the path, does it say?
It was ACT, either 139 or 28. I'd have to go back and check on which one they were. But that was an act that was passed, and that we are supposed to be using tools that meet that. So if that helps.
So I guess back to Ms. Austin's point, I can appreciate wanting to see the forward data from the most recent testing cycle, but at a previous meeting I brought up from the budget committee, the assessment data presentation from 11/4/24 PowerPoint, where you had 82% of kids at or below 1 to 3 plus grade levels in reading. What was done from that data? You don't need new data to compare to old data. That data is atrocious. It makes you want to puke. So I guess my question is, before you even get the new data set, what was done about the old data? And then maybe just something to think about. The second question is there any sort of I don't want to say checks and balance, but check and balance in the iReady assessment, because they are a business and obviously they want money. Is that number, how is that number calculated? Is there some sort of check from a teacher or someone in the building who's looking at the students' responses versus what iReady says? And granted, I get that you get a computer system to increase efficiency and get faster results, but take a random sampling of X number of students compared to what iReady says they are, and compared to what an educator who is seasoned and can see these things say what they are. Is any check and balance done? Because then that puts you down two paths. Either we really need to revamp education in Springfield, or iReady might be scamming us.
We can come back to that one a little bit today, because you're looking for alignment between iReady test score and a teacher's expectations, that's aligned with where they think that child would reasonably fall.
Yeah, or I guess even what the plan was, right? So if you are presented with the data and that data says X, in this instance, it's math and reading, which are the two things that are in this PowerPoint that we were given the budget committee. That data X says the decline of this percentage of students over this period of time. What was done about that? So, right, you can't continue your curriculum. Again, I'm not an educator. These educators, I give them so much props because I couldn't do it. But you have that data that says X number of students are so far behind. You can't continue with the same curriculum, because then you're just going to be where you were. So was an audible call mid-year to say, hey, let's look at the data that iReady presented and, let's fix it, let's update it. Maybe we need to change the reading, maybe we need to change this, change that, which I don't know the answer to that question, but we don't need January's testing data to have a start of what was presented already in November.
I understand that question, and all I can do is pair what has been told to me, so maybe we put something, a presentation together around that for a future meeting, but.
I mean, the CDE work is new, on the newer side. So in there, it's been focused on math. They're now starting literacy. So it's a new curriculum designed to be able to catch it, like math, for example, like is the first one, for example. So, and this is my interpretation, so I could be completely wrong, and somebody's gonna have to hit me with a shoe. But it's a new way of looking at things, and so if we have a kid that's going up, progressing through the grades, but never learned, say 2 + 2, right? And they're going up, and finally they get into like 7th grade, and their math is odd. This new curriculum will be able to go back down and teach the kid, identify and teach the kid the 2 + 2, and bring it up, and hopefully bring them up faster and be able to catch them up. So to some degree, we have responded by looking at the numbers, and we're changing our curriculum. Unfortunately, like everything, it's a process and it takes time. And I think, having a child in the district, it's frustrating that it takes time because our kids are aging up while we're trying to catch up. But I mean, I can say there has been a response.
That's the root of my question.
Probably not as much as any one of us would want.
As long as it's positive.
And hopefully, I'm hoping that our next round of testing information will be delivered soon, and hopefully it'll show positive movement.
Thank you.
Jody, the phone.
I just wanted to come back and express my sadness for David leaving. I've worked in the district for over 30 years. I'm just really sad because when he came to Union Street, it was a mess. He has built such a community. This year has been so amazing. It's just going to be such a great loss. We're all sad at Union Street to think that he's leaving us. I feel bad. I wish there was something that we could do to have him stay on, because it's going to be a great loss for our community. And man, it makes me so nervous to think that you're going to bring a whole new environment next year and we don't have a principal. We no longer have a superintendent in the building. It's really a crazy time to be introducing something like this. It's not well thought out. I've been here, I've seen a lot of changes, and it's too fast. You're moving way too fast. That's all I can say about it.
Thanks, Joe.
One question to you personally.
To me personally, yeah.
I'd like you to make a point of order that the conduct a few moments ago was highly inappropriate, and that attempted ad hominems at individual people in the meetings should not be.
That's fair. So I mean, to raise point of order, we shouldn't be calling out people by name or staff, members of committees or anything. We're all here trying to make the schools better. We all are working together to try and do that. Our opinions may not always align, but we all do have the best interests of the students at heart.
Anyone who has questions about my task can ask me personally if they wish to.
Thanks, Rick. Great. So can we circle back around to all the different discussion? There's a lot of discussion around, do we have the staff to support the students? We're talking about the budget. So as a board, do we want to request more additions to the budget? Happy with where it is? Do we want to throw it back to the administration version 4? Go on to the next page of what the numbers look like currently.
Yeah, I'm welcome to go, happy to go through all the pages to answer any questions you have. I don't know if it makes sense to look at the tax calculations to see where you're at.
I think if we just flip through the slides we have, unless somebody else wants to go a different direction.
I want to say something. So it seems when we asked about support staff to support our children and offer them what they need for the upcoming year, we heard from Elm Hill, we heard from Riverside, and it seemed like the Union Street principal was the one that kind of struggled the most with not having enough resources. At the meeting last week, we talked about that specifically, and at the end, when we mentioned that we were going to bring back these positions, he said he thought that would be helpful. Tonight, he's not necessarily saying that, so I just kind of wanted to have him come back and just let us know what is really the struggle, because I think we're doing our best to be able to provide what we can for staff that's hireable, because we have so many positions open, that is within the budget, because as everybody knows, if the number is too high, it's going to fail no matter what it says, and what is best for the students. And we all want what's best for the students. And so it's hard to be able to come to that consensus when it doesn't seem like there's any give or take to be able to provide information that's helpful. So that's kind of where I'm struggling, is it seems like Elm and Riverside are very excited and looking forward to this transition. And I understand David's had some, reservations about it. And I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, but I also want to be able to have this conversation so that we can at least communicate and talk about what may still need to be addressed. That's all.
Okay. Thanks, Jess. I think the conversation goes back a few years, right? I mean, I think it goes back to when things were cut and there wasn't really a discussion about it, right? I think that saving money based on attrition is not the way a district should operate. And I have had people retire, and the district has seen that as an opportunity not to refill those positions. That's not good for kids. So attrition is I understand we can save some dollars here or there, but I'd love to sit down and show you, let's look historically at what Union Street has had, go back 3, 4, 5 years ago compared to what we currently have. So I support what Rick presented tonight because the four of us sat in a room. I guess, Jess, what I'm trying to do is bring up a bigger picture discussion around what I have heard about these two classes of Elm coming up to Union Street, and I haven't heard frank discussion about what is going to be done to support that staff. And so I'm not advocating to add and add and add. I'm just sort of looking back historically on what's been cut and cut and cut. And again, very concerned about transitioning 2 grades up to Union Street with the same level of support. I was in a meeting the other day and someone, I'm not gonna name names here. Someone was asking me, why does Union Street need 3 IAs? And they said it with sort of a smirk on their face. And there's this lack of understanding about what a day in the life looks like, and chasing kids around and supporting teachers. And so, Jess, I know it's a roundabout way of answering your question. So I support what Rick just articulated, right? That's why we all got in a room to talk about it. My concerns are more for what are we going to do for those 2 grades transitioning in with the lack of staffing that we've had for a few years now, right? We have not added, we have subtracted, whether it's the intensive needs program, whether it's a regular ed pairs, and a lot of it has been by attrition. Either someone resigns or retires, and we are not reposting those positions. And I didn't feel like I had a lot to say in that discussion. I felt like it was seen as a way to save some money. I'm not sure if I would have been heard, but I didn't push too much because, again, it was seen as an opportunity to save some dollars. So I support what Rick presented. I have grave concerns for how that school is going to be supported next year. Jess, I hope that someone answers your question.
It does. I think, being on the budget committee before being on the school board, one of the things that I really struggled with was, cutting positions. And it always seems like if the budget fails, that's what needs to happen. And it's hard. It's hard for all 5 of us. We want to have the positions. We want to, have the support. And it comes back to what Jess may or may not be saying as soon as she gets a chance, but communication. It comes back to having the town understand what it takes, understanding that we need the staff to be able to support the students at all levels so that all of our students are achieving at the highest level possible. So thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess I think I'm a little concerned that maybe I didn't get my communication across last time. If my expectation was that this budget was going to come back to us with the support that it needed to support these additional 2 grades that were coming in. And it sounds like this version maybe has these support rooms, but perhaps we're still lacking to support the behaviors that we're seeing right now in the district, wherever they be, whether it's at Elm or Union. And I guess if it means that we need to add on, I don't see how this plan is going to go through if we don't, even if it's a higher number, if we don't have the supports in place. And so if we're going to go through with this plan, I really need to be lockstep that we have these supports from all of the buildings. And I guess I'm confused because I thought that's what we were
I
going
don't
to be
think
getting
any of
at.
us are disagreeing with your comment. I think when we first started the budget discussion, we asked that of the administrators, and the answer was yes. And with a but, and we're back to the but. So we can come back for version 4. That's a decision we can do.
I mean, I'm gonna play a little devil's advocate here, because all of us in this room would double this budget so that our kids could get everything that they need. You know, I feel confident that, you know, everybody sitting here wants more in. The question becomes, we're walking a tight, or, yeah, tightrope. There we go. With the other people that are not in this room that do support our kids. I'm not saying that people that are budget conscious don't support our kids, but there's a lot of other people that are looking at the number. So, and I get it, like, this is constantly this balancing act of what do we need for our kids and what do we need for our residents who pay property tax. And I don't have an answer. I just, you know, I know it's frustrating. And I know that, you know, the state formula plays into it. This weekend, Chase had a hockey game in Essex, and I got to see their weight room, which is probably 5 to 6 times the size of ours. And I walked around the outside of that school, and I saw Chittenden County tax dollars at work. And it's gorgeous. And I look at our schools in Southern Vermont that were holding together with straw and bubble gum. And teachers doing the best that they can. And I don't know that I have an answer. I just, like, this weekend was such a display of frustration over what we're dealing with. So yeah, I mean, I just don't know what the answer is, because I want to add all this in, but I also don't want to have to keep going out and keep going out and keep going out and ending up cutting even more than what we have right now. That's like, I'm really, really concerned about that on the other side of it.
There's some hands up, and then we should come back to the number question. Taylor Norris.
Hi, yes. I just wanted to say that David has kind of already spoke on it, but I am definitely concerned for Union Street next year as an employee there. We need help. We need a lot of support. I work in the planning room, and with myself and Jody and Sue, we're busting our butts along with David and Paul every single day. And if we're going to add 2 classes to it next year, we've already struggled, you know, adding 1 class, getting them from Elm Hill and trying to settle them into a routine that we have at Union and how it works there. And, you know, adding another 2nd grade and 3rd grade next year, it really concerns me, especially not having the support in place.
Thanks, Brooke Wiley.
Hello, I work at the All for One program at Union Street, and I just feel like a lot of the questions that have been asked tonight really haven't been answered to give me a confidence in what it looks like next year. I feel as though the budget is not just about numbers, it's about transparency, and I feel as though it hasn't really been too given tonight. I'm a little frustrated by how the meeting's going because, like I said, not many questions have been answered. And I feel as though Union Street has been brought up a lot. And I feel as though David has done a great job at advocating for us as a school. And I just wish that those that are making the decisions actually go into the building and actually watch and see what we do every day. because I feel as though it might open your eyes a little bit.
I just want to let you know that I have been in the schools. I do go into the schools. I've gone to Union Street, I've been in Elm Hill. So I'm the only board member who's retired who can do that. The rest of the board members would love to go into the schools, but they have jobs. I've seen what you're talking about. I've seen what the administrators are talking about. But I've also heard from taxpayers too, who have to pay the taxes. So we've got a balance here that we're trying to make, like Dee was saying. And it's very frustrating as a board member not be able to give you the help that we need. But I also am frustrated because we have people on fixed incomes who can't pay their taxes. So we're on a fine line here. So I understand what you're saying and I agree with it. And I do get into schools at least twice a week. But I don't have an answer because we are on that fine line. I would hate to see a budget go down because one of the only things that we can do, that we have control, because the state controls most of our budget, is personnel. And I don't want to do that. So we're trying. And I'm just frustrated. I know the administrators are all doing the best they can. Just understand that we are all frustrated.
Hi again. Yeah, I mean, you guys are putting a lot of new people into the budget, but then we have the old budget that we're working with, and we haven't even been able to fill these slots for hire in the district. I don't know. I know I've talked to a lot of people that would be really interested in a job or a position at our school district. I mean, I started as a mother, a young mother. It was a convenient place for me to work, to have time with my students, with my children, I mean. And now the hiring process is hard. People that have raised their children and have decided that they want to come out and work in our district, or that could be an interesting piece for them to look into, the avenue. The expectation in the hiring process is really high. They now have to pass this AccuPlacer. So if you have been out of school for like 5, 6, 10 years, it's hard for you to come back into this district or any district to take an AccuPlacer for employment. So if you fail the AccuPlacer, then you have to wait, I believe it's a month to redo this testing. And if you're looking for a job, who has all this time to invest just into our district to pass an AccuPlacer? So the hiring process for paras and instructional assistants or whatever we might have, I don't know what other districts do, but something has to change there to get more people into our district.
Thank you. That's good information. That's right.
I'll read it because I stumbled and I'll read. I'm struggling to see how we are going to secure the staff we need regardless of the budget. We already have so many open positions and the kids are still being filled. Our class sizes are huge, our teachers don't have enough support, and so many IEPs aren't even being met. Union is losing its rock, along with no longer having a leader for the entire district. Help me understand how this huge change regarding the school, like class change, is going to be successful right now. And along with what Brooke just said, I agree. So many questions, even tonight, they're not getting answered. Like, we're just getting an agreement and a head nod. I've sent out emails and I get 0 responses. It's really hard to not feel heard. And maybe we wouldn't have as many towards the changes if it was transparent and out in the open a little bit more. Like, I feel like I've asked many board members their positions, nobody responds, like 3 or 4 emails. And then I'm told that we don't really have all the answers. We got to wait for, the superintendent. Well, then she was gone. And then all of a sudden at the next meeting a week later,
there's answers. And it is what it is, but you guys can respond, like, as staff, as public, as we need help understanding these things, and when it's just kind of thrown out there, and I'm asking the questions and I'm not getting the answers. So it's not, how does the general public get the answers when they're not asking?
I'd like to add, I'm gonna get killed for this, but I want to give some perspective about how unique and special education is in New England. Because you just said our class sizes are huge. Our class sizes get us laughed at by my friends in education that work outside of New England. It is atypical that they have a class size below 30 and they have nobody in the room helping. And that's why they spend a teeny tiny bit on education. That's why, you know, so many people, like Emily's in Mississippi, many of her classmates that grew up in Mississippi, they go to private schools. If they're going to be a college-bound student, they go to private schools. That's what they find their money for. But I guess I just want to give you perspective that even though maybe a class size of 23 feels really big to us, that it's not when you look at national information. And I don't want to.
No, I appreciate that for sure. So I guess going back to that though is we're not having, there's so many behaviors, regardless of what it is somewhere else. This is us right now, and we're budgeting for however many positions, and I don't know what it is now, that we're still open. And yes, if those were all filled, I'm sure we'd be much better off. But we're making this huge change, and I'm not sure how we're going to get all those additional staff that we keep saying, like, oh, we're going to get these staffs, we're going to have, like, let's put them here and here. That does not mean we're going to get them. And then where are we at with all, you know, like, it's been a constant fight for these IEPs. You know, it's for years now. We have 4 kids in the district, you know, fighting and fighting and fighting, and it's like a full-time job. Like, and it shouldn't be, but it's always like, oh, we don't have an OT right now. We don't have this right now. We don't have that. Well, until you light a fire, we get no results, and it's without proper time. The timing right now is and I don't disagree with the preschools, any of that. It's not the timing right now where this district is, and just, I mean, again, losing the history, it's devastating to lose David. Like, it's losing its rock. I'm terrified for next year. I'm just terrified. I don't think the timing is right. And that's kind of my point.
You also have to look at Mississippi's tax rate if you want to pull that out.
Oh, I don't know. It's true.
So they
It's
take
true.
their tax dollars, and the people, the landowners down there, take those tax dollars because they pay almost no taxes.
Yep.
And they can invest that into their private school.
You're right.
So those kids that are in that 30+ class, when you bring in those, you got to remember you're bringing in a whole different realm.
Yes, and you're right, and that is the perspective. Like,
They're saving their money so they can send their kids to private school.
you're right.
I want the public to understand, this board not forced David to resign. It was never mentioned to David. David did this on his own. I take offense at people think that we had something to do with it. We didn't. I've known David since he started here, because I was on the board. He's done a great job. But David decided on his own to move on. Please don't think this board forced him to leave.
There's been nothing said about it.
Okay, well, that's what's coming to me.
No, because of
Not
the
just
change.
you. I'm not saying you. I'm saying
He hasn't had the support for years.
Yes.
And we've heard that for years. And I openly will say this in a meeting, that he has voiced that he hasn't had the support that he needs. And I think it's gotten to the tipping point with what happened at the last meeting. That's your tipping point. So did you force him to resign? No. Did you put him into a corner where he can't get out? Yes. So yes, you backed him into a corner that he doesn't feel that he can achieve what those kids need. And so at this point, his only option is to leave the district. So when you say you didn't back him into a corner, you also didn't listen to the community. And I respect you very much. And I respect how you come about, and I'll bring this up. You talk about Elm Hill, and you got so just passionate about what was going on there. Well, he gets both those grades. And that is him next year. So here he's watching a guy passionate and just out of his mind that we need help. Well, you're shoving 2 grades right at him. So how is he going to achieve to get out of that what those kids need?
The IA right now versus IAs that he has 5 IAs and help in planning room. Elm Hill has 2.
He has more grades, correct?
No. I understand what you're saying, but on the other hand, I don't want to think, we didn't put him in a corner, we didn't force him, okay? We have other schools too, they're running the same problems, okay? Riverside, Elm, like you said, I'm passionate about Elm because I know the problems. But it was David's choice to move. And I firmly do not believe that we forced him. And that's my personal opinion. He's going to move on, and he'll do well wherever he moves on.
I mean, the role of a school board is to establish a budget and create school policies to run the school district. It's not to be in the schools, leading them and directing what they're doing. That's not the school board's role. It's to make policy, budgets, and oversee the superintendent. So I work a full-time job. I work a lot of hours outside of my normal workday hours, and I try to respond to as many emails as I can. But often I take vacation days to do school meetings that I don't take to spend with my family. So I'm in this to help the schools and do it in a way that's meaningful. And I know a lot of the members here do that as well. Steve is retired and can do some of the things more than others can during the day, but we're really looking to guide the school districts much like any other district does. So it's like, we're not in there directing, I'm not in there directing traffic. If someone sends me an email, I try and get a response to them from somebody in the school district, and other board members do that as well, but we're there for advocates for the community. Great.
I consider myself to be several of y'all's friend. I don't doubt any one of y'all's desire to do right and what's best by our students. Please, even though we disagree, let me make that point clear. I will say this, where Dave is concerned, even me, neurodivergent, socially often awkward and unaware as I am, left the meeting last week almost 90% certain we were going to see the resignation we saw today. I am surprised that it surprised you, because I don't know how he could have made it any clearer without actually dropping an ultimatum on you guys, which he would never have done. That's not his style. I almost wish he had. I don't know if it would have done any good, but if there would have been any chance that it would have kept you from voting this through, and it might have not have been the straw that broke the camel's back for him and might have let him stay here, it would have been worth it. But the things that have brought us to this pass, He said we were going to lose people. I don't think he's going to be the only one. I can only hope that, and I sanctimonious though this may sound, I don't care. I was right before. I get to do this. You know, I was right before. I'm pretty sure I'm right now. We're going to lose more people. We aren't going to have, you know, we didn't put more positions into the budget as a budget committee because we can't fill the ones we already had listed for years before. There's not going to be a line out the door to fill the new ones from people who resign over this down the road. Plus the people who are sitting here speaking up as upset as they are over Dave right now, plus the parents who don't want their fifth graders going to, you know, be with the seventh and eighth graders. The universe is trying to tell you something. I don't know what other way to implore you. You missed the sign before, and now it's cost us greatly. Please stop now before it costs us more.
Like a point of clarity, maybe anybody can validate this, but he gave us notice the day before the meeting. It was dated the 14th, whatever that letter. No, it was after. I don't reserve that comment. The reason I asked about the commentary on the superintendent search is because I think that whether we say it out loud or not, the path that we're going down and looking at it from any kind of perspective, business perspective, anything else, is just not sustainable. I mean, if this were a company, it would have been bankrupt forever ago, out of business. It's not aligned with what the needs are well. And I get the balancing act that you have to do, trying to get creative so that we get a palatable budget out in front of people while meeting the needs of things. You know, there's a trickle effect whether it's really going to happen or not. I think that's a challenge that, you know, is going to take some hard sweat and these types of discussions to figure out whether the end result is what we want it to be or not. The last year I had asked during, I think it was before the vote, to have a list of what the state, federal mandated expense lines are on the budget. Because I think a lot of the angst that we're feeling don't need to be directed here locally. They need to be directed at another level. They need to be directed to the state. They need to be directed to some other government agency that is not us. I dare say, Rick, shoot me down, 80% of what's probably in there, we would not choose necessarily to do. Don't ask me, that's rhetorical. So I asked for that again. I think I'm going to segue this into the last piece. If that were added to the budget data and what's being proposed to the voters, to say, here's the things that the district ideas and obligations that we want to do. Here is the endless list of things that are being mandated by other places that we do. I think that would highlight a lot of disdain, people to address and point their frustrations elsewhere. It's almost exactly what I said last year. If that is doable, and I know that's a big ask, it would be fantastic to see the difference. I think there's too much centralized government type control mandating things that don't necessarily fit the district, putting things in places where they don't need to be necessarily, they don't align well. You go to Essex and you look at this $1 gazillion, weight room. Well, how can they afford to do that? Well, they've got a taxpayer base that's equipped to be able to handle that. I'm sure they have contests up there that are things the same way. The challenge is, I bet there's more. When we started this mission last year, more transparency with the budget. So that leads me on to my last part. I'd really like there to be, and I haven't seen it yet, and shoot me down if I missed it, some message from the district talking about the fact that all of these data points, whether they're organized or misorganized or not, are public on the website. They are out there. So I encourage anybody that's out there to share this stuff so people can get involved, whether it's good or bad or ugly, because I think at this point there needs to be a lot of courage that make some real hard changes and decisions that are very uncomfortable. They're gonna have weird ripple effects. That's sometimes exactly what you need to do to get out of the ditch. Nobody ever said you're gonna not rip your front tire off and get stuck in the mud. Sometimes that's what you gotta deal with. So I encourage the district to send out a message to the school community with a link to that stuff and maybe a summary sheet of what's where. It's kind of a little haphazard. We were dealing with it with the budget committee. So I think that's really important for people to get out there. It's also going to go and have people be involved. They'll be able to see the stuff. They won't be just going to the ballot box saying, hey, you know, here's $41 million that we want from you guys. At least they'll have the ability to know it's out there. I know it's tough to do, but that's not tough to do. It's tough to think about the fallout of that. There's going to be a lot of questions and a lot of confusion on what's what. But I think it's really important if we want to get taxpayer support that people know that that stuff's out there and they can go look at it themselves.
Thanks, Rick. Jody Patel.
Hi, sorry guys, this is quite a while ago, but Steve, you were talking about 5 IAs at Union Street. Our planning room only works with 3 IAs in there. I believe there's no other IAs in our building but the 3 of us.
Okay. Thank you. So if we circle back to the budget number. We've seen the draft articles that were part of the packet. I just want to come back to the budget surplus and talk a little bit about that because it's been there as separate warning articles. Last year, the town approved that money to go into the tax stabilization fund, and then right after the budget passed, the board elected to use that to buy the tax rate down. Is it safe to say that's the board's plan again? So that money stays local to Springfield and the tax stabilization fund.
That's correct, but if you also look at the bottom of the revenue page, page 45, you know, you're, I don't, it's a packet page 45.
Yep.
I don't have the final audit yet, but we're very, very close. I mean, we're looking at $2.6 million surplus. So I put $1,090,000 of that surplus in as revenue, plus $800,000 going into tax stabilization and $800,000 going into the capital reserve. So you're theoretically using 1.8 of that to buy the tax rate down. What's that?
Is it better for the town to put it all into the stabilization fund? Like,
in my opinion, yes. But you know, you got this balancing act that you have to figure out that what are you going to do? And if you go back 3 or 4 years before we created the tax stabilization fund, I used to use the term that that surplus is like a drug. If you get on that $1 million drug every year, you better find $1 million every year, or you're going to be forced to cut $1 million. So it's a delicate game of chicken you have to play. I think based on the parameters that are presented to you today, this year, and with the fortunate fact that you do have $2.6 million in surplus, you've got that ability to buy that tax rate down. Still, but you're gonna have, if you put that $800,000, you're gonna have $2.4 million in your tax stabilization surplus. Now we're still expecting to use that $800,000, but you still have a healthy tax stabilization reserve.
I would be in favor of, and I'm sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding you.
No, that's
but
fine.
I would definitely be in favor of recommending that we put some towards our capital fund because our buildings are gonna continue to need work and I wanna make sure that we have that.
That's in
Maybe,
there. That's
maybe
in
that
there.
was still in there, so.
That's still in 800,000.
Okay. I
which
just
is-
wanna make certain that it was.
Which is the amount you've done the last couple of years. That's still in there. There's 800,000 you're asking the voters to put in tax stabilization reserve. And then we're gonna use $1 million right off the bat to buy the tax rate. It's a little more comfortable this year than it was last year because it was such a fluid formula last year. Changed 15 times from January 1 to May 30. Pretty solid what that formula is gonna be this year.
And am I safe to summarize that the board is in line with supporting the schools with what they need to help with these grades? We can't control hiring practices of who we hire. We can't. All we can do is say post a job, so that person still has to be found and brought into the district. But are we asking for version 4? Are we?
What are you gonna ask him?
I don't know. I felt like the conversation went circular where we started off
It went
with,
sideways real quick.
sounded like they were in agreement that what was
We,
in version 3 was enough, and then it sounded like maybe we needed more. And I'm not.
Maybe I could say it differently.
Yeah, sure.
To be clear, right, this budget needs to support what the board voted for, which was the grade shift. So not just to support next year, but will this budget support the grade shift, which is part of next year? And that's, I think, maybe where we've gotten a little sideways and I haven't heard a clear answer to.
so Riverside is very well staffed, my opinion. Nate will tell you he wants 10 more. Being a little facetious. No, Nate, don't jump down my throat. Somebody said it. He or somebody. I mean, yeah, if money wasn't an object and the workforce wasn't an object, we'd be presenting a budget with twice the staff that we're currently presenting. But you have to balance all of those pieces together. And, from, I guess a week ago, last Monday, you sent us to go work on version 3 to provide the supports that Union and Elm needed. We sat in a room together for I don't know how long, and it wasn't limited to just those 3 positions. What do we have to do? What do we have to structure? What do we have to do? Came around as this is what we need. And now, to voice my frustration a little bit, we're sitting here at the 11th hour, said, hey, great, yeah, I got that, but give me more. And that's fine. If you want to send me back and add 2 more in, I'll add 2 more in. I'll add them in tonight. That's not the problem. The problem is where does it end?
Yeah.
Because I'm a little frustrated that I've asked the questions. I pushed back at all of them. And just, my pushback is asking questions. Well, what about this? Do you need that? Why this? Why not that?
I mean, the district started the budget process back in June. You were sending emails about this year's budget.
And this, is everyone can define what is too quick and what is not enough time and what is everything, but this conversation about these grade shifts have been happening publicly since August. And whether people chose to listen or not, I don't know. Whether people now realize that, oh man, it's going to happen, I better start talking now, I don't know. But, you know, you have a statutory deadline to set a budget, whatever it is, whether it's 40 million, 50 million, 200.
Got one more shot of going to make any changes.
Theoretically, you got to give me the direction tonight, and you know, we'll bring it back on Monday.
Suzanne?
You know, it's very frustrating because I've been saying actually for the last about 3 months that the supposition that we're going to shift the grades, I said that needs to be communicated to parents. And I've talked to different parents who aren't as involved as I am. And I said, hey, did you know this is what they're talking about? They had no clue. And I realized that these are public meetings and that people could attend them. But your average parent in whatever school district doesn't have time. I mean, we're on 2.5 hours of a meeting right now. Like, what parent has really time to sit through 2.5 hours of a meeting if they don't even know if it has anything to do with them? To know whether maybe their child is getting shifted to a different school the next year. And I've said this needs to be very transparent. And I commend you guys for actually putting it out now when it came out. Because I didn't actually think it would probably be another couple months before it came out. But I'm not surprised that there's pushback. And the feedback about having multiple buildings, every district around you has the K through 6 and 7 through 12 model, not this, like, we have all these different elementary schools, multiple transitions, multiple administrations, multiple nurses' offices, multiple guidance counselors' offices. That's where our costs are, is that we have multiple buildings, and each building has to have all of that infrastructure in place. That's the issue that Springfield Schools has, is that we've dumped money into all these multiple buildings that now we're like, oh, we put money into renovating them. But now what do we do? Because you still have to pay a principal, you still have to pay a nurse, and apparently a nurse's assistant, and a guidance counselor, and a custodian, and everything else.
I mean, I'd add 30 plus years ago, I came to town and I took minutes for a committee that wanted to build, at the time, pre-K wasn't a thing, so a K-12 building. I thought it was a beautiful idea. Actually, it wasn't K-12, it was, I think, K-8 near the high school. So it'd essentially be on the same campus. Thought it was a great idea. Taxpayers and the town hated it, loathed it. I mean, just look at what the pushback we're getting and the concern we're getting over putting 5th graders and 8th graders together. You can imagine kindergarten to 8th grade. That was huge. You know, and so things started moving forward to what we have now. I think it's a great model. It's something to consider, but the amount of money it would require us to spend in a bond to do that is not feasible. You know, and we're looking at, if you follow some of what the governor and AOE and some legislatures are saying, we're going to be looking at maybe consolidating high schools with other towns. I think, there was some discussion, Jess, you were on the call, where maybe one high school per county. Like the state of education in Vermont's about to flex really, really hard. And we've got to be really nimble, and we've got to be in a position where we can advocate well for our community. But it's a lot to be said, but it's hindsight being 2020, probably a lot of people would go back and build that new school. That's not where it's not where we are. And I don't think our community is excited to spend $100 million plus in order to build one facility, even, and the amount of time it would take to catch up, consolidating to one principal from 4, consolidating nurses' offices, consolidating janitors. So I hear what you're saying, but it would cost more than we can think about right now.
Back to version 3.
Yeah. I guess I'm frustrated. Like we had the discussions, we even asked our administration last week, is this enough? Were these decisions where they were? And I feel like what got brought back to us is sort of what everybody left the meeting saying. So I don't know.
Well, I questioned David. He said he supported it. So that tells me that he's saying that yes, the staff is in there to be able to support transition. Again, we can continue to add staff, but I don't know at what point we're gonna reach something it's not feasible. Does that make sense? I don't think it.
And then we have a giant surplus.
I want to stick with this version. Because, like everyone here said, we asked, I know the administration asked, if we just say, okay, we'll go to 4, next week they're going to tell us I need this, so I'll have to go to version 5. Next following week they'll say, well, this we'll go to version 6. It was asked.
We did about next week.
Well, that was just.
Yeah.
Right? We can't, but this is what we asked, the administration asked for it, this is what we got back. I think that we just stick to our guns and stay with 3 and move on.
I would just say that it's a budget, right? It's our best guess of what we're gonna need for next year. So there's nothing to say that administration can't come back in July and say, I was wrong. Instead of this position, I would like that. Do you support this decision? We're most likely going to say yes, because they're gonna come with information that backs that finding. They could also come and say, hey, I've been able to hire these 2 positions. Can we use this money to hire Y? More than likely, we're going to support that. So we forget that it's a budget and not something that's set in stone. It's a number we're working towards more than every position is defined, and that's exactly what we have to hire. So you can make a motion around version 3 tonight. We can wait until Monday. We do have another meeting.
So before you do that, at the risk of making you think you're in California, I'm going to throw a little bit of gas on the fire.
Okay.
And I think most everyone knows that I'm a $1.99 syndrome guy. I don't know how well you can see that, but that 4.31% on the ballot article bothers me. If you cut $100,000 out of this budget, that would read 3.98. Your tax increase would be less than 1 penny. It would be 0.6% increase on the tax. Cost per pupil would be $13.90. I look, this is a pretty tight budget. No single place I could find $100,000. But in non-salary and benefit line items, it's roughly 3/4 of 1% of the non-salary and benefit expenditures.
Gotta dig deeper for me.
Lights, heat, books, supplies, those types of stuff. I'm not asking you to give me more work, but if you wanted me to find that 100,000, I would literally have to go nickel and dime on a lot of line items to get that budgetary ballot article for $390. Put it on the table.
Stop, because Rick knows my weakness at $1.99 too. But I also am happy moving forward with version 3. So
Can you offer more work? We can come for Monday with, we still have version 3. We can ask for version 4 with, where'd you get the money from? And you can make, and we can have both on the table. Doesn't.
Oh, sorry. How much does the truancy officer position holding up? That could be your $100,000 right there for a position that's been vacant.
Oh, it's not that much.
Salary.
It's a part-time position.
Do we have that one?
By state statute, I'm pretty confident you have to.
Yeah, that's okay.
But if we don't have a truant officer, every police officer is a truant officer in this state.
We have the state statute.
State statute says every police, I know from being.
No, if the district has to have one.
Right.
I
So
agree
we
with
don't
what you're
have
saying
one.
then.
Every police officer is a truant officer. So if we haven't had one in how long?
Post it and not fund it.
Do that too.
Yeah.
That could be, still 50%.
Yeah, we don't, that's it. Patty?
What is the cost per student now?
Currently this year or what we're forecasting?
For 26?
$13,962. It's 13,385 for FY25. That's a 4.31% increase, which will be on the ballot.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rick, what is the threshold? Last year when two questions. One, how much does it cost us for a budget not to pass? Like for you to go back through to redo it to the vote?
My time?
No.
You can't afford my time.
Well, I know that. We've never been able to afford that. But no, the school district. What's it cost, or the taxpayer? What's it cost to go back to vote?
It's $3,000 to $4,000 a vote.
And then last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, you and I had a conversation about the budget, and after it didn't pass, and even if we knocked it back, it didn't affect the
taxes raised in town.
Yes. So where is our threshold? Because if there is this threshold in there, shouldn't that be what we're advertising? Like, hey, listen, we could cut another $1 million off this budget, or we could add another $1 million, and it's not going to cost any of these taxpayers any more money. Yeah. And I didn't hear that advertised last year. No. To a taxpayer, that's a pretty important thing, because isn't that where Act 60 comes in and these Essex towns start funding some of our schools? And well, you better be nice.
Well, we have tried that, Matt. Maybe we haven't done it very well, but as long as I have been here. We have spoken about it quite a bit. As this budget is currently presented, I can't get my cursor to work, but the red line down there, roughly $8.9 million of the $40 million will be raised in Springfield. And that's pretty close. You can see it up there. That's pretty close to 50-50 between the residential tax and the corporate tax, or the non-residential tax.
But where is that zone of not changing? And I know that's a technical question, but there's got to be a zone there.
There is. He's explained it before.
Yeah, I mean, you could theoretically add $5 million to this budget. You're still only going to raise $9 million for Springfield.
That's the number we need to hear. So if
Well,
we can
said
add 9 million to this, what are we pinching pennies for, and why are we not giving the schools what they need?
Because 90% of the people that walk into that ballot article, sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox.
And that's what I want.
They walk into the ballot box, all they're going to see is $42 million, and your increase in cost per pupil is going up 10%. They're going to say, no freaking way. And I don't care. I mean, I have said it till I'm blue in the face that Springfield will only send $9 million.
So that's our advertisement right there.
I've been to public meetings. I've had people stand up and call me a liar. Well, that can't be true. There's no way that can be true. Well, yeah, it is. Here's the formula. Here's how. Well, now you're not telling me the truth. Or they're telling me, well, that tax money is coming from somewhere, so I'm sending it to Washington, who sends it to Montpelier, and it's still my tax dollar. Well, yeah, technically that's probably true, but the odds are, in Vermont, that's not the case. That money's coming out of New York, California, but people don't want to hear it. All they want to hear, all they want to see is $42 million and an increased cost per pupil of 5% or 6% or 10%.
So if you put in a $9 million plus budget and it doesn't pass 3 times, and then it goes back to the state, we end up with what? We were close to this last year. There were school districts that
pass a budget and we operate.
Well, if you don't pass a budget, you're operating at 87% of this year's budget.
Yeah, we end up
I thought they were changing that last year. Wasn't the school?
Oh yeah, everybody wanted to change a lot of things last year. And
so what did they change?
That whole formula changed 15 times last year, and they're talking about changing it again next year. But this year, we're probably I feel pretty confident that we know what the formula is when I had up on the board a minute ago. They tweaked it a little bit, and what they did was tweak the formula. They added here and they subtracted here, so the net number is the same, but it looks like the state is doing a much better job and the local town is doing a much worse job. That's not the case. The numbers are the same. They just changed their formula to take the argument away from us, Springfield, the local district. But look, we're keeping our tax rate pretty damn good. State of Vermont, through the CLA formula, is really screwing us up.
So I agree 100% on that.
They changed the formula, so now I can't say that anymore because they have manipulated the CLA. So it looks like our tax rate has gone through the roof, which it hasn't. And then they're coming in to save us with a higher CLA that brings the tax rate back down. That's my current change that's taking place this year.
Thank you.
Just
advertise it. Just advertise it. Figure out how to advertise it.
We mail these things home to everybody. 3 people say, "Oh, you threw that away. I don't look at that. That's propaganda. I'm not going to read that." I'm telling you, 90% of the people, you can advertise till you're blue in the face. 90% of the people walk into that ballot box and they see those 2 numbers. That's the decision they're making. All this other stuff is window dressing.
I haven't seen the big pie graph out there that says, this is not paid by you and this is what you pay. No, I haven't seen the big pie graph out there, because people probably don't know. Yeah.
I apologize, I got on myself.
I don't know, maybe like the size of the building. And the school board standing in front of it saying, can I help you understand?
We put it on the Riverside sign.
But yeah, but nobody can read that drawing.
I mean, that's exactly what I've been asking for from the start of this budget committee, is how are we going to advertise this? How are we going to publicize any type of a budget, whatever it is? And I mean, I don't know. Nobody has any ideas. I certainly don't have any time to run a PR on the budget on top of my full-time job and my parenting, but I don't know what the answer to that is. My hope is that when we get this budget passed, that is part of the discussion. We need to discuss how are we going to promote this and market this and engage people in the community, but we can't do that until we get a budget.
Right, but we talk about that every year.
But I also see Matt's point, right?
Every
Like
year.
if we're not.
I like the giant background.
I do too.
But that's the thing is nobody looks at this stuff. Nobody looks at any of it. And they're gonna walk in and most of them don't even care. They just have no in their head.
The
But if there's something
most
that's,
success you'll have is if you have a phone tree, you just gotta call.
I don't think they'll understand that, because look at the demographic of who you're reaching to that are voting in this town. You need something that, bam, in their face, and you need people in front of it to say, hey, listen, do you understand what this is? Because even people that understand the whole tax calculations, and no offense, because I know you love numbers, but when you watch this online and stuff, you can't see half of what your numbers are, and they scroll through, and it's very tough to follow, even if you understand budgeting. But maybe a pie graph that says, hey, this piece is what Springfield taxpayers are responsible for. Yes, there's this number on the ballot, but this is what you're responsible for, and this is what comes from other areas that you are not directly paying, and this is what it does to your tax.
Doesn't that say that?
It's too complicated. I want you to make it more simple.
Two colors instead
I got 4 pieces of the pie.
Yeah, but you're a numbers guy, so it makes sense to you. I am telling you, it needs to make sense to the general public.
Let's work with Ben to figure that out.
Simplified so much.
But maybe
You're hired.
another level.
Oh, I'm not hired. I do too much.
No, you're hired.
Bring yourself back.
You're gonna
I
take that
delegate
back.
is what I do. Yeah, have the school kids design this huge thing. This is what we need from our taxpayers. This comes from other places.
So you need to come back next meeting when we have the discussion on how to market, so that we.
Probably have a basketball
Advocate
game.
to the legislature.
I have to drive a bus. I don't have time for that.
We can put it on the side of the bus.
But to my point, if we could add on and not affect the Springfield tax rate, should that be a version we're looking at next week, right? That version versus this version?
So
It has
so
an
the people going in
it has an incremental impact. It's still gonna.
I stood outside and tried to have these conversations. If, let's say we're just going crazy and we're gonna add $9 million to the budget. I'm gonna wear a bulletproof vest to try and have those discussions. Because I totally get it, and it drives me crazy. But, we have to operate within what we can attempt to pass, so we're not.
You want 3 and 3.1 with 100,000 out.
Yes, that's
Maybe
me.
you go 4 with 100,000 in and see what it does to the tax rate like that.
Say that again.
Say
that.
Just, you know where it helps when we go to marketing. We may not. So to what Jess just said, we have version 3.1 is with the 3.99 number for the $1.99 people. And then there's 3.2, which is $100,000 up. We may not agree to it, but it'll show us what it does to that 8.89 number
Or how
to the
about
taxpayer.
instead of up 100, we go to 4.99. So we just elevate it to the next $1.99. How much would that
I know what you're
be?
saying.
And then we can.
Troy looked like he was confused by no.
I'm not $1.99 guy.
But I think that would help our decision next week as far as.
Well, it helps with marketing.
Well,
yeah.
What are you adding?
But what do you, yeah, what do you,
Numbers just to.
what do you spend in that? Pick a number, 300,000.
I suspect administrators will come up with something.
I mean, we heard in school suspension at the high school. I mean, there's things to go with it.
I've heard supports on
I'm not.
I mean, at the
saying
end of the
want to
day, I
spend
asked that a
funds
little
on-
bit facetiously because to warn a budget, you're not warning 4 million line items, you're warning $40,352,000.
Yeah, it goes back to my previous thing. But I think that informs a discussion around what town of Springfield pays.
Okay. So you want 3.9
So
or
everybody
4.9?
on board for that, or is that silly talk?
No, I think that, I think it'll maybe be able to play out with, this is what we did and why, and this is what. I don't know, because we still get back to we can't fill the positions, so.
I can see the 3.1 version to get us down to the 3.98%. But the other one, I feel like you could give us an idea of what it would change for that, but I don't necessarily think you need to go through the effort of putting in some stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I just thought it was a number.
Yeah.
No, that's all I would give you. is a number. If you wait 10 seconds, I'll give you the number.
There's other hands up too. Suzette?
I just my mind is filled that this is what we're presenting to the public because the budget committee spent many, many hours going through things and making recommendations, which weren't taken. And we're just presenting the same budget to the taxpayers. Oh, here you go. Whoops, I guess we need all this stuff after all. That's extremely frustrating as a member of the public who volunteered for that position.
We went beyond the technology recommendations. Well beyond. So to increase the ballot article to 4.97 is an increase of $200,000.
But you don't know what it's raised from Springfield. That's really where my question.
Yeah, that would take me a little, I gotta dig into that. It's not gonna be that much difference. So you're gonna be right now. $8.99, maybe that, probably $8.92 million.
I wasn't suggesting that we were gonna raise up to that point. My suggestion was more around educating people on what those differences are compared to what the town actually pays. In fact, that's
Which, if you go back, just to give you a relationship to that $200,000. To add those two professional sped teachers was $270,000.
Yeah.
217. So roughly two professionals.
I mean, from a numbers perspective, I hear what you're saying, but we're going on 3 hours. There's 1,100 students in the district-ish. There's maybe 60 people who have a vested interest at this point. We're the other 11, we're the other 1,000 parents. People just don't care as much as you care. And I appreciate your passion because I'm with you. I'm sure everyone in this room could stand on the rooftop and scream about the money, but they're just not going to care. people just don't care, especially if you don't have a kid in the district. They're gonna walk in and they're gonna see, oh my God, 10%? No way. So I think the goal of reducing the numbers, but playing the number game of, does that fill the positions we need? Does that fund the positions we need? I think is the way to go. With a prayer that you fill the position.
And whether it's 1.6 or 2.4, you've got that tax stabilization reserve. So if for some reason the workforce opens up, we can come back and say, hey, yeah, we filled them all. We would like these other three. We need you to deficit spend so you can use that money to hire those positions.
Yeah, because where the positions, sorry.
No, that's okay, go ahead.
Where the positions were concerned, the only reason why we recommended removing any was because of the fact that we had so many that hadn't been filled. We would have loved to have recommended keeping all of the positions in there. I think
That's
certainly fair.
Yeah.
That recommendation is currently reflected in this budget, correct? About reducing some of the unfilled positions, that's reflected in this budget. I just wanted, that recommendation from the committee was one of the ones that we did act on.
Yeah, plus the fact that you guys did, because I remember you going
Yeah,
over.
all of them except for the nurse.
I remember you going over the technology. You guys went further than what we recommended.
Yeah, we kept the nurse assistants.
Hi, quick question. Just asking if you did indeed circle back to the extra teacher for that class of 96. I believe it's the current second grade that's 96 coming over, and then the first grade's coming over, I think, has 80. So whether or not we're going to try to put 25 kids in a class or not. And then also, have you factored in the cost of all these shifts that we're making? You know, the cost to Riverside and moving everything, and the cost to Elm in that budget. Is it in there already?
Yes, it is.
The costs of the shifts are in when we looked at the student class size.
No, that grade 3 bubble. You didn't add a teacher for that.
And that was a subject of discussion last meeting.
Right.
Yeah, one more hand. Deborah Belton.
Hi, yes, I just wanted to represent taxpayers who I'm also an educator of 30 years, and I'm a taxpayer who does not have students who go to school in the district. However, I wanted to represent taxpayers who do care very much what the teachers are saying and would not just vote based on not wanting our tax bills to go up, because we do hear the teachers. Having been a special educator myself, I hear their stories. I think what they're saying, they're describing very real needs. And I do think that if you make the budget more transparent and what the funds are going towards and what the needs, and hear these voices of the educators that we have that are working hard in our district, I don't want to whitewash how taxpayers will respond to a vote, because I definitely represent the other side of that.
Thank you.
I think I would just, Deborah, I hope that you join us at our next meeting, because I think you're going to be an important voice to how we can reach taxpayers like you, and how we can gain support to make sure our teachers and staff and students are supported.
Sure, I'm happy to.
So no action tonight on the budget. We're coming back with 3.1 and just math problem for George. But go up to 4.99, and what does that do to what Springfield pays? It just,
Oh.
that doesn't have to be what you bring
Yeah,
up the board. You can email that to me.
I can do that tomorrow morning.
Anything else for tonight? Otherwise, we're back here Monday, the 27th.
That's just a budget.
It's just a budget.
No,
Well,
sorry.
that's budget.
So we
The
do,
housing thing, right?
yep, so remember Laura Ryan came for the housing request for the property on South Street.
Well, it's a budget plus the ballot warning, which will include the language for the transfer.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about that land transfer.
And what I sent you out, I don't know if you had a chance to see it, because it was maybe an hour before the meeting tonight. It was a slight change from what the housing authority presented for language, and that change was from your attorney. It wasn't material. Uses and uses and uses.
That'll all be provided again in the packet for next Monday.
Yep.
February 17th meeting is a holiday, so I just want to make sure.
Another holiday? Oh, that's a break week.
That is a break week. It's break week and it's also President's Day, so.
Sometimes we skip it.
Yeah, that is right, we do.
Just
We gotta
saying.
talk about
Because then we have
pushing
a
the
town
budget
meeting.
out though. The town meeting's right after that.
So I gave you a communication timeline. Again, I don't know if you guys had a chance to see it today. And we have to put a lot of stuff behind that, some meat on the bones, but let me know if you see something there that is no way in hell, well, actually, the district public information session about the transition is currently scheduled for 2/5. I don't know if that's a problem. I don't know what day of the week that is, but for whatever reason, that's what we've got. But, we envision, the administration envision, you having a specific public information just about the transition. We can talk about budget stuff if it comes through and it ends up materializing, but largely what this conversation was, and then shortly after that, each of the buildings are going to have their own building-specific public information sessions.
I think we all feel the sooner the better, so we can be transparent about it. So, but I would say if we know the 17th is a holiday, then at the 4/3 meeting, we can decide if we need another meeting in February.
I think that's fair.
Because we'll be more informed. Okay. That being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
You made the motion, just seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.